surprisingly revealed. How my sister's teasing made me transform my life in just 30 days. Jake Thompson stared at the mirror. His reflection felt foreign. Underneath the layers of familiarity, tousled hair, fading smile, lay a storm of uncertainty brewing. Just a teacher, the words echoed, a narrative woven from Emma's quips. His sister, a corporate titan, thrived on high stakes, flashing accolades, while he meandered through underfunded classrooms, battling disinterest. Did he truly contribute? Was he enough? Each morning, he donned an armor of routine, coffee, grading papers, dim classroom lights flickering with the potential he felt slipping away. His students' vacant stares resembled the deadened echoes in his own heart. It was a routine steeped in nostalgia, yet tinged with unease. Emma's half-baked jabs about his noble but dull profession gnawed at him. Intuition screamed, he was meant for something greater, wasn't he? The familiarity of the Midwestern town, housing memories of lazy summer days, felt stifling now. The unease morphed into a conviction, spurred on by a dare from his best friend to upset the equilibrium. Transform his life in 30 days? What a bold challenge. But beneath that bravado lurked fear, wild and uncontained. Could he truly redefine himself when Emma's voice taunted him? You teach kids about algebra. I run multi-million-dollar deals. Desperation loomed, pushing him into the world of self-help workshops, seminars, and the relentless pursuit of validation. Yet, as he threw himself into this personal revolution, he couldn't escape the harsh reality of his teaching environment. Each idea he proposed met with skeptical glances, colleagues entrenched in tradition wielding their criticism like swords. Interactive learning? Not in this district. The tension coiled within him, making the air thick and suffocating. Moments of inspiration slipped through his fingers, igniting brief flashes of hope, taunted by a disheartening reality. The innovative programs he envisioned were interrupted by the dull thrum of institutional inertia. There's something to be said about the feeling of wanting to implement change only to hit a blank wall, a sense of powerlessness creeping in. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. What if he took a stand, proposed a new initiative to engage students actively? Each breath felt heavier as he envisioned the moment, battling against the swirling doubts. Rejection emails piled high, their weight unfurling despair in his gut. Why was he risking everything for a vision he feared would crumble before his eyes? His fingers drummed against the desk as anguish tied knots in his stomach. Why can't they see my vision? He whispered to himself, grappling with mounting pressure. The impending meeting loomed over him like a storm cloud. He took in the familiar surroundings, the worn chairs, the chipped paint. It all felt suffocating and stifled creativity. Jake's heart raced as he prepared to speak, uncertain if his voice would echo or fizzle into whispers. The idea of being just a teacher slammed against his self-worth. Would presenting his plan bring validation or simply amplify Emma's taunts? In the silence of his mind, he wondered, holding tightly to the hope that standing firm would redefine him, not just for others, but for himself. Each moment felt tense with possibility, compelling him closer to a decision that could irrevocably change his perception of worth. The morning of the meeting dawned gray and heavy, mirroring Jake's mood. As he wrapped his fingers around the off-brand coffee cup, the warmth provided little comfort against the chill of doubt that gripped him. He had rehearsed the pitch countless times in his head, relying on mental affirmations as though sheer will could alter the cynical landscape of his school environment. Would his colleagues embrace this new approach? Or would they dismiss him, just as they had before? He arrived early, taking the time to breathe in the familiar musty smell of the teacher's lounge. It felt almost like an old friend, yet this morning it threatened to suffocate him. Images of Emma's smirking face crept into his thoughts, each taunt echoing like a refrain from a haunting melody. What if you fail? The question slithered into his psyche, constricting his confidence. For a moment, he considered abandoning the idea altogether. Perhaps a quiet life of grading papers and organizing field trips was all he was ever meant for. But then a flicker of determination surged within him. Every moment he had spent carefully crafting the proposal echoed in his mind, a toolkit of strategies designed to capture his students' attention. This wasn't just a lesson plan. It was a vision of hope, not only for him, but for the young minds eager to thrive. How could he withdraw now, when this potential lay within reach? Striding into the meeting room, Jake straightened his back, channeling all the courage he could muster. Eyes shifted to him as he took position at the front, a precarious spotlight illuminating the map of his vulnerabilities. For a heartbeat he hesitated, caught within the gravity of their expectations. But then, he caught a glimpse of a few students' faces, those unsullied by the jibes and jaded perspectives of the staff. Their eyes sparkled with a potential he felt responsible for nurturing. "Thank you all for attending," Jake began, his voice surprisingly steady. "Today, I want to share a plan that might change how we engage our students." Each word seemed to build on the next, an intricate structure rising against the existing barriers. As he detailed his initiative on interactive learning, he noticed expressions flickering across his colleagues' faces. Curiosity, skepticism, perhaps a hint of intrigue. However, the questioning soon began. How will this engage students in the long run? What's the measurable outcome? The inquiries descended like an avalanche, but Jake stood firm. With every question he responded with clarity, igniting deeper conversations. Yet, beneath the surface, Jake grappled with the gnawing anxiety gnawing at the corners of his confidence. The interjections thrumming from seasoned educators remained, a stark reminder of the risks tied to ambition. If he stumbled, failure would become another echo that Emma could exploit. Was all of this even worth it? But just as he sensed the tide turning, Morgan, a senior teacher with a reputation for being critical, spoke up. "Jake, can you explain what you're really trying to achieve here? It feels idealistic." The room quieted, and for the first time, Jake sensed a crack in the facade of indifference. "Yes, it's idealistic," he admitted. "But what we owe every student is more than just open books and classroom walls. We owe them engagement, the possibility of dreaming bigger." With those words, something shifted within him. The weight of Emma's taunts felt lighter, distances closing between his vision and his current reality. If he could inspire just one student, make them feel valued and heard, wouldn't that be worth the risk? As the meeting concluded, a cautious glimmer of hope flickered within Jake. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't just a teacher. But answers eluded him still, and doubts lingered. In the wake of burgeoning excitement came the realization that support, perhaps even acknowledgement, wasn't guaranteed. What if the subsequent discussions led nowhere? What if his fears were justified? Little did he know, the true battle was yet to come. This was merely the prelude to a crucible moment that would challenge everything he believed about himself. As he stepped out into the rainy afternoon, a sharp breath left his lungs. The storm was brewing not just outside, but inside him, a whirlpool of transformation. Would he rise to the challenge when the tide turned against him, or would he retreat into the shadows he sought to escape? Jake shuffled down the slick sidewalk, the rain matching the rhythm of his internal turmoil. Each droplet felt like a reminder of the discussion he had just navigated, leaving him mulling over the questions that had surfaced. The skeptics around the table echoed in his mind. How long could he hold the weight of his ambitions against the tide of cynicism? What if this wasn't enough? As he approached his car, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the rain-smeared window. The despondent figure staring back seemed like someone he barely knew, a teacher clinging to scraps of validation in an unforgiving environment. A sudden urge to drive away, to escape those haunting doubts brimming beneath the surface, surged through him. But before he could retreat, a wave of resolve swelled inside him. Determined to combat the shadows of uncertainty, Jake made a conscious decision. He would seek feedback. A novel concept for him, he understood the value of diverse perspectives. Diving into a pool of ideas and criticism might strengthen his proposal. It was a way to disarm the anxieties simmering within. That evening, the confines of his living room transformed into a makeshift think tank. With a notebook spread across his lap, he typed a flurry of emails, reaching out to colleagues, even those who had posed challenging questions earlier that day. "Your insights during our meeting got me thinking," he wrote. "I'd appreciate your feedback on my proposal." As he pressed send on the last message, Jake felt lighter, liberated from the solitary weight of his ambition. The act of inviting collaboration ignited a flicker of hope. Perhaps through dialogue, he could create a scaffold strong enough to support his vision. Days turned into an exhilarating whirlwind. Responses trickled in, each bringing new insights, concerns, and recommendations. Some struck straight to his core, cutting through fragile places that had long gone unexamined. Morgan's earlier challenge, for instance, prompted a deep dive into clarity about his goals. What exactly did he envision for his students beyond mere engagement? Reflecting on that question in quiet moments, Jake discovered an unexpected revelation. His passion for teaching stemmed from his childhood. He remembered how the right teacher back then had lit a fire inside him, making learning feel dynamic and relevant. Inspired, he spent the next few days honing his proposal, ensuring it represented not only engagement, but also a pathway to self-discovery for his students. As the weekend approached, Jake found himself pacing the floor of his small apartment, nervous energy coursing through him. With each conversation, his confidence grew stronger. Yet, the specter of Emma's mockery loomed in the shadows. "I'm not just trying to please anyone," he murmured to himself. "I want to transform lives, including my own." The oath felt transformational. A fundamental shift had begun. He was stepping into an adulthood where defeat wouldn't confine him to silence. The following week, armed with a revamped proposal and renewed purpose, Jake returned to the teacher's lounge to solicit more opinions, ready to weather the storm of criticism. As he engaged with colleagues, he felt like a chess master strategically maneuvering pieces on the board. He was in control of his narrative, steering it toward a vision realized through collaboration and clarity. But just when he thought he was gaining momentum, Emma appeared at the edge of the group, a smug smile caressing her lips. "What's the plan now, Jake? Still dreaming big?" Her deriding tone sliced through the air, but instead of retreating, something within him sparked anew. The time had come to face her dismissive laughter head-on, and with it, his own insecurities. The path ahead was uncertain, but Jake's frustration had metamorphosed into something powerful: determination. It pushed him forward, even ignited a fire of ambition within him. He could not just reclaim his professional identity, he could redefine it entirely. What he didn't know was that Emma wasn't the only challenge on the horizon. In a world where ambitions battled doubts, true conflict awaited him. A trial that would test not only his resolve, but the very fabric of his purpose as an educator. As shadows loomed closer, Jake felt the horizon shift, the storm swelling behind him. The following day dawned gray and oppressive, a reflection of Jake's inner landscape. He arrived at school, heart racing, a cocktail of nerves and anticipation igniting within him. Today would be different. Instead of defaulting to fear, he embraced the challenge that lay ahead. He walked through the halls, determination radiating from him like a beacon. Each step brought focus. He had a mission. In the staff meeting room, he engaged with colleagues more actively than usual, offering insights and sharing his refined ideas. As he spoke, he noticed Emma's expression falter slightly. Perhaps there was power in his newfound confidence, one that contrasted starkly with his previous hesitance. He realized then that he could either be the victim of her derision or transform it into fuel for his growth. When Emma interrupted during a moment of clarity, her words dripped with sarcasm. "So, you really think you can win them over with this second-rate idea? Isn't that a bit naive?" Instead of retreating into a defensive position, Jake squared his shoulders, feeling the adrenaline course through him. "I think change begins with belief, Emma. If I can inspire even a single student to see themselves differently, then it's worth it." His voice held a steadiness that surprised him, as if fortified by collective feedback and self-reflection. As the meeting progressed, Jake leaned into his proposal, breaking down his vision into actionable steps. He felt the room shift. Some colleagues nodded in agreement, while others scribbled notes. Each sign of engagement served as reinforcement, building his confidence brick by brick. After the meeting, he sought to anchor this momentum. He scheduled individual discussions with supportive colleagues, each conversation revealing new depths to his proposal. During these exchanges, Jake honed his adaptability. Instead of shielding his ideas like fragile glass, he recognized their potential to evolve. Feedback was no longer a threat, it was a lifeline. One day, as he stood by the whiteboard detailing an innovative lesson plan, a confrontation emerged. Several students had gathered, intrigued by the changes they had witnessed in their classroom. They peppered him with questions, their eyes wide with curiosity. The blend of youthful wonder and skepticism ignited something in him. He no longer saw the classroom as merely a stage to deliver information. It transformed into a dynamic space for discourse, growth, and revelation. During lunch, Emma cornered him, her bravado marked by a hint of irritation. "So, the students are buying into your grand vision, huh? Just remember, the classroom isn't a place for dreams, it's for structure." Jake felt the cataclysm of doubt rise again, but grounded himself. "Emma, what if structure can coexist with dreams? Isn't education about finding that balance?" This time, he convinced himself that he knew the answer. He had begun crafting his identity, not just as a teacher, but as a facilitator of change, and that was powerful. At home, he devoured educational articles and podcasts that resonated with his vision. Late nights transformed into a ritual of personal development, where he pinpointed strategies and innovations that were previously elusive. Every word he absorbed infused him with motivation and clarity. His passion blazed like a flame too strong to extinguish. Then a profound realization struck him. The only limitations existed in his mind. Emma's comments, once crippling, now felt like sparks to ignite his resolve. He vowed to confront the skepticism rooted in him as part of a greater journey. The day approached when he would present his proposal to the school board. As the nerves began to weave tightly into his chest, he acknowledged their significance. These were not just butterflies. They were reminders of his growth. Stepping into the boardroom, Jake stood before the panel, feeling the weight of both support and apprehension. His proposal was more than just a document. It stood as a testament to his transformation. Even through that sea of uncertainty, one question echoed in his mind. Could he really change the conversation surrounding education in his school? With the board watching expectantly, Jake inhaled deeply and prepared to unfold the layers of his vision, ready to challenge not just their imaginations, but himself in the process. As he spoke, he made a silent promise to stay focused and to confront whatever doubts arose, for he now understood that real transformation demanded commitment through conflict. Little did he know, the true test of his resolve awaited just around the corner, one that would rattle his ideals and push his aspirations to the brink. Would he rise to meet it, or would the ghosts of his past linger too heavily for him to overcome? Jake stood in the boardroom, voice steady but heart pounding, as he unveiled his proposal. With each sentence, he saw their skepticism beginning to shift. Yet, amongst the nodding heads and muted whispers, he caught Emma's gaze, piercing, unwavering, as if daring him to falter. He delivered statistics that showed engagement increases when students feel valued, igniting discussions on how to reach the disengaged. His approach wasn't merely theoretical. He shared anecdotal evidence, illuminating how a simple shift in perspective could invite student involvement. With every supportive nod from his colleagues, Jake felt emboldened. This was his moment, where potential merged with purpose. But as he concluded, something gnawed at him. Despite the passionate response, uncertainty crept back in the form of Emma's smirk. Would this be enough to convince the board? Would they really see his vision as viable, or would they dismiss it as just another teacher's unrealistic dream? As the anticipation of questions loomed, he committed to silence his doubt and focus on the feedback, the very essence of growth he had embraced. "Thank you for your presentation, Jake," the chairwoman of the board said, breaking the tension. "We'll take your proposal into consideration. However, I sense some members have reservations, particularly regarding implementation." Jake locked eyes with Emma, whose demeanor suggested she was on the edge of her seat, ready to pounce. If he faltered now, all he had built could collapse. "While I understand the concern about implementation," Jake replied, addressing the board, "the key lies in selective pilot programs. We can start small, measuring outcomes while adjusting methods as we go. Teaching is dynamic. Our strategies must be too." The board nodded at this. Jake felt a boon of confidence surge within him, juxtaposing the brewing storm of doubt in his mind. The conversation shifted, and soon he found himself responding to specific queries about budgetary constraints and time management. Then Emma interjected, "But what makes you think students will accept your unique approach when traditional methods have been so ingrained for years?" The question landing like a Scud missile, Jake had to recalibrate quickly. He had remained acutely aware of his growth, but Emma hit at the very fabric of his ideas. Was he really prepared to confront his critics? Drawing on the reservoir of knowledge he had cultivated, he replied, "Change isn't just about acceptance. It's about creating an opportunity for students to voice their needs. When students see their ideas reflected in their lessons, they don't just adapt, they thrive." A palpable tension hung in the air. The board turned, considering his words, and in that moment, Jake found an unexpected strength in vulnerability. He didn't need to be perfect. He simply needed to be authentic. Yet as the meeting adjourned, Jake felt emptiness linger, familiar yet unsettling. They hadn't voted on his proposal. The future of his vision depended on their deliberations. This uncertainty would haunt him until the next board meeting, potentially weeks away. As he stepped back into the stark hallway, the echo of the boardroom slid into the background, replaced by Emma's needling voice ringing in his ears. Would change truly take root? Could he withstand the rigidity of the system that seemed designed to stifle innovation? The stakes had risen beyond mere approval or failure. This was about reclaiming his agency as an educator, and perhaps even more as a person. Armed with this awareness, Jake resolved to prepare, not just for the board's final decision, but for whatever obstacles lay ahead. He would delve deeper into research, collaborate with peers, and most importantly, tap into his own experiences of transformation. But he would soon discover that external resistance wasn't the only challenge. The deeper he pushed towards change, the more he confronted elements within himself. The insecurities about his own approach, the fear of true rejection, and a lifelong hesitance to embrace his own authority. A new journey awaited him, one that promised revelations beyond the classroom and into the recesses of his psyche. What he didn't know was that the heart of this journey would unearth past memories that had long dictated his motivations. As he prepared to face the board in the upcoming meeting, Jake realized one truth. He would not only need to present his vision, but also engage in an internal battle that may redefine who he believed himself to be. What hidden truths would he uncover along the way, and would they ultimately propel him forward or pull him back into the shadows of doubt? Jake awoke the following morning with a weight in his chest that had settled there overnight. His mind was a tempest, swirling with uncertainty and dread of the upcoming board meeting. The fear of rejection gnawed at him, pushing him deeper into contemplation. It was more than just the proposal. It was about confronting the ghosts of his past, those whispered doubts that resurfaced every time he sought to assert himself. As he made his way to school, he noticed the vibrant colors of the fall leaves. The hues reminded him of simpler times, like when his sister would tease him about his ambitions. Back then, he would retreat into his shell, acknowledging her words yet feeling diminished. However, now her playful jabs resided in the back of his mind as both an echo of challenge and motivation, a reminder of how far he had come. Who was the boy she used to tease? A timid shadow of who he was becoming. Jake stepped into the classroom, feeling almost buoyed by the fresh responsibility waiting for him. The students were buzzing with their own energy, and as he observed them, he recognized a certain fervor within their discourse that fueled his own passion. What he had proposed was not just about pedagogy. It was about creating an environment where these young minds could thrive and express themselves freely. At lunch, Jake found himself collaborating with colleagues, exchanging ideas that sparked excitement in the air. Sharing common goals illuminated his path forward. In these discussions, he felt a burgeoning confidence. He was not just an educator, but a part of a community of innovators. This was a stark contrast to the isolation he often felt, particularly whenever Emma's critical gaze bore down on him in meetings. Yet, as the afternoon wore on, doubt crept back in. The planning seemed solid, but could he handle the questions that would inevitably arise in the boardroom again? What if the board's response was just as skeptical as it had been before? This realization was a new layer of conflict. Would he choose to allow the fear of failure to define him, or fight through it armed with the resolve he had cultivated? After the final bell, Jake found a quiet spot in the teacher's lounge and began jotting down his thoughts. The pen glided across the page, detailing not just the logistical strategies for implementation, but also the emotional connections he wanted to evoke in the students. His anger at the educational shackles felt transformative. In that room, he was deciding to reclaim a narrative that belonged to him, no longer tethered to someone else's perception. This was a pivotal moment, a visceral realization that his power came from within and not solely from outside validation. He had to embrace not only his ideas, but the very core of his identity, the teacher who believed in the profound impact of genuine engagement. A shift was happening inside him, as if he were shedding old skin, preparing to emerge anew. It was terrifying, yet exhilarating. However, with this emerging strength came the responsibility of confronting the remnants of fear. Would he still feel like the timid boy when Emma's smirk inevitably surfaced again? The thought unsettled him. As the day wound down, Jake felt the gravity of the upcoming board meeting. It would not just be about defending his proposal. It would be about challenging his past insecurities head-on, an opportunity to assert his newfound voice. In those final moments of solitude, Jake envisioned standing before the board, articulating with conviction the necessity of his vision while fully embracing the journey that had shaped him. He would no longer be a shadow in the room, but a beacon of possibility. And as he closed his notepad, a whisper of determination surged through him. The time had come to face both the board and himself. But as he drove home, a cloud of doubt loomed ominously. What if this wasn't just about personal transformation? What if it meant losing connections with those who had once supported him, like his sister? Would pursuing this path mean drifting away from his roots? The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow across Jake's kitchen as he prepared breakfast. The familiar smell of coffee brewed a sense of routine, but inside, an unfamiliar tension coiled tightly around him. The board meeting was on his mind, but more pressing was the inner conflict boiling beneath his surface. Would he risk the life he had built, tethered to the expectations of loved ones? Was he ready to stake his claim on his future? As he swallowed his last bite, a thought hit him. What if he approached the meeting differently? This time, he could shift the focus. Rather than solely advocating for a project, he could share his own journey, how the experiences that shaped him could enhance the education of his students. With this in mind, he grabbed his notes, reformatting his presentation in a way that spotlighted not just the facts, but the heart of his vision. Arriving at school, Jake felt an electric current running through him. He passed by classrooms filled with laughter, the sound igniting a spark of inspiration. He had a purpose. Today wasn't merely about convincing the board, it was about cultivating a space where students could challenge their fears and become agents of change. If he could embody that spirit today, perhaps they would resonate with the energy of possibility. The day unfolded, punctuated by fleeting moments of interaction with his students, each connection solidifying his resolve. This wasn't just about policy, it was about their potential. He imparted stories of his struggles outright, how he had felt the chill of self-doubt, the overwhelming urge to shrink away from challenges, all tempered by the fire he now held. During lunch, he elaborated on his renewed focus with a colleague. "I realized it's not just what we teach, but how we share ourselves," he mused. The warmth of his own words surprised him, but even as he spoke, a twinge of apprehension lingered. Would they think he was being too vulnerable? As he sifted through thoughts, preparing mentally for the meeting, Jake noticed a message on his phone. It was from his sister, a simple reminder of their close tie. "Thinking of you today. Can't wait to hear how it went." A rush of nostalgia enveloped him, and he found himself questioning, would this decision to stand out transform their relationship? In the moments leading up to the meeting, he felt a surge of adrenaline blend with his unease. The wood-paneled boardroom held an air of formality that always intimidated him. He recalled Emma's smirk during previous presentations, a sharp reminder of his vulnerability. Yet he dug deep within himself, clutching the growth he had cultivated. He wasn't going to relive that fear. When the time came, he entered the boardroom with his head held high. As he positioned himself at the front, he glanced at the familiar faces. This was his moment. He began with the story of his own educational journey, sharing his fears and aspirations. He articulated not just his proposal, but the palpable evidence of his growth. Halfway through, an unexpected question came from a board member. "How can you assure us this personal transformation won't make you less objective?" It echoed in the room, the tension palpable. Jake's breath caught, a reminder of how quickly the ground could shift beneath him. Would he allow their doubts to unravel him? Instead, he took a moment, gathering his thoughts, pondering his own path. He met the board member's gaze directly. "My experiences have shaped me into a more empathetic leader. They provide context to my decision-making process." Confidence filled him, even as uncertainty tightened within. As he continued, he felt something shift inside. This wasn't just about defending a proposal. It was a testament to his growth. Yet even through his assertiveness, doubt whispered in the recesses of his mind. What if they disagreed? With every word, he committed to this new version of himself. It felt exhilarating but dangerously exposed. And as he concluded, he looked around, gauging their reactions. The stakes had never felt higher. With each challenge he faced, he was standing not just before the board, but against his past. But what would the verdict be? Would he emerge as the teacher and leader he envisioned, or would past insecurities plague him once more? The feeling of impending reality hung heavy as he awaited their response. Silence enveloped the boardroom, each second stretching into an eternity. Jake's heart raced, an orchestra of nerves and anticipation swelling within him. He caught the skeptical glances darting between the members, and that gnawing voice of doubt emerged again. Was his vulnerability provoking them, or could it connect him to their core concerns? When the board chair finally broke the stillness, Jake steeled himself, his palms sweaty against the sleek podium that felt like an anchor keeping him from floating into a sea of uncertainty. "Thank you for your presentation, Jake," they began, offering a cautious nod. "Your story is compelling." The board members leaned in. For a moment, he felt a flicker of hope. However, we still have reservations regarding the implementation of this project. Their tone shifted, sharpening like a knife. Empathy is crucial, but we also need data that supports your initiatives. Heat flushed through him. Would he be dismissed? His personal journey oversimplified into numbers and graphs. No, he thought fiercely. His growth was more than cold statistics. It was rooted in the authenticity of experience. I understand your concerns, he began, carefully choosing his words. But empathy drives effective education. I can't separate my journey from the decisions I make for my students. Focused intensity pulsed through him, aiding his resolve. Every challenge I faced has deepened my understanding of the barriers our students confront daily. I want to teach them how to face their fears, just as I did. The words flowed, almost like a conversation rather than a presentation. He was no longer just advocating for the proposal. He was sharing a piece of his soul. Then came another voice, sharper this time. But Jake, isn't this approach too personal? You need to remain objective to lead effectively. Emma, with her usual skepticism, looked unconvinced, challenging his authenticity. For a fleeting moment, the weight of her disdain hung heavy. Was she right? Should he have maintained the facade of the impersonal educator? He fought against the instinct to retreat into his past insecurities, refusing to give her power over his narrative again. Being objective doesn't mean stripping away humanity, he shot back, feeling emboldened. My past equips me to better serve my students. As he spoke, he noticed small shifts among the board members. Some leaned forward. Was there a crack forming in their armor of skepticism? Moments of connection opened pathways for deeper understanding, and he seized upon them. The exchange ignited something in Jake, a realization that he had stepped beyond simply conveying data. He had woven a narrative that contained agency and authenticity. Each nod of acknowledgement fueled him. If he could make them reconsider their rigid stances, perhaps he could pave a way for a more holistic approach in education. With the final remarks buzzing with adrenaline, he offered, "Let's view this not just as a project, but as an opportunity for transformation, both for ourselves and our students. We can foster resilience together." After a few moments of discussion among themselves, the chair responded, "Your enthusiasm is palpable, and we appreciate the depth you bring. We'd like to revisit your proposal with data to support this empathetic approach." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the members. Riding the waves of affirmation, Jake left the meeting room with his spirit considerably lighter. Yet, the reality of what lay ahead loomed large. The board would evaluate the proposal through the lens of his vulnerability and storytelling. Would they embrace the change he sought, or would resistance arise in session after session? He couldn't ignore the underlying tension. His personal journey had intertwined with professional stakes. What if they ultimately reverted to their original reservations? As he stepped out into the busy hallway filled with laughter and chatter, it dawned on him that while he had faced the board, the real challenge still lay ahead. His sister had always teased him about stepping up. Now, the time had come to confront not just the board, but the very pillars of his identity. His heart raced again as he contemplated this. In the compression of an instant, he realized he was no longer who he once was. How would he redefine himself? Would he challenge not just their expectations, but his own as well? The uncertainty bit at him, sharp and stinging, but it also buzzed with the flickering light of potential. His phone vibrated again, a familiar ringtone cutting through his thoughts. His sister was calling. This moment would decide whether he could embrace the complexities of familial relationships along with professional possibilities, or whether the past would pull him back into a version of himself he had almost outgrown. Taking a deep breath, he answered, curiosity blending with trepidation. What awaited him on the other end? "Hey, Jake, are you free to chat?" Her voice was bright, almost teasing, mirroring the playful relationship they often had. But today, the stakes felt different. Their connection had roots that ran deep, intertwining moments of laughter with echoes of shared memories that could either lift him or anchor him to the past. "Sure, I just wrapped up a meeting with the board," he replied, trying to sound casual while an undercurrent of anxiety tinged his words. "What's up?" "Nice. How did it go?" The question glided in, but he sensed a subtle expectation behind it. Could she sense his apprehension? Could anyone? "Actually, they were receptive," he began, carefully tracing his thoughts. "But they want data to back up my proposal for the new initiative." "Well, there's a surprise," she laughed lightly. "You know they always love their numbers, but you've got this. Remember the times we used to sit on the porch and you'd tell me about all the kids you wanted to help, how you thought charming them with your stories would win them over?" Her words triggered a cascade of memories, moments of ambition that pulsed with hope. He had used storytelling as a tool to connect, to break barriers. Could he channel that spirit again? "I want to," he said, quiet but firm. "But it's tough. They need proof beyond just my experiences." "Jake," she said, shifting to a more serious tone, "you're not just selling them a program, you're offering them a piece of who you are. Did you tell them that?" "I did, but the fear that it's not enough lingers." He felt exposed, a vulnerability he hadn't quite expected to voice aloud. "Listen," she pressed, "maybe they need a reminder that education isn't just numbers. It's about people, right? You're passionate, and they know that. Don't let anyone dismiss your journey as just personal. It's your strength. And hey, who makes the best sales pitches? Those with personal touches." Her encouragement settled in, mixing with the restlessness in his gut. Perhaps the melding of emotion and intellect, the raw authenticity of his experiences mingling with the data he needed to present, could create the compelling narrative he sought. He needed to dig deeper. "What if," she continued, "you invite them into your world, show them the human impact?" He could feel the wheels turning. "What do you mean? Like real stories?" "Exactly. Use real experiences, anecdotes from the classroom. Make it undeniable. You always said you learned from your own struggles. All those kids inspired you. That's powerful. And data can follow once they feel what you feel." Tentatively, he began to formulate a plan. He could highlight the real differences he had seen, employing specific examples from his journey. Data could enhance his points, but sharing the transformations would resonate more than graphs. Pulling from his own setbacks, his own growing pains in education could deepen their understanding of what he envisioned. "Maybe I need to think of myself as more than just an educator," Jake said, feeling a rush of clarity. "If I'm going to lead, I have to be the bridge between personal and professional." "Exactly. You've got this, Jake. You're not just the teacher. You're the one who can change everything," she cheered. As their conversation wrapped up, he felt a new sense of direction forming. The ladder to his professional growth had rungs built not only on data points, but on the strength of his experiences. If he could reveal the deeper narrative to the board, intertwining his journey with facts, perhaps he could shift their perspectives. Yet, amid this burgeoning resolve, nagging doubts loomed. Would they really respond to this approach? Or would he be met with their usual resistance, reduced to an anecdotal outlier in their demand for hard evidence? He stepped outside, feeling the cool air washing over him, invigorating, yet daunting. Every breath came with anticipation, like standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to leap but questioning the tide below. He realized now that he had to face not just the board's skepticism, but the undercurrents of his own insecurities. Jake tapped the screen of his phone, ready to revise his proposal after their call. But the question nagged at him. Was the bridge he was attempting to build solid enough to withstand their scrutiny? With each word he wrote, he felt the exhilaration of potential, but also the weight of self-doubt creeping in. The moment he hit save, a new realization pierced through the tension. Stepping out of his past was not merely about success at the board meeting. It was a leap into the unknown, an embrace of transformation. As he stood still, grappling with the possibilities, he thought of the risks ahead. His sister's playful teasing lingered, a reminder that often the greatest leaps come when you dare to redefine the edges of who you are. And as he prepared to navigate these new waters, he whispered into the emptiness of the hallway, "Tomorrow is where it all begins." But with anticipation brewing, he received another notification. The response from the board lay waiting in his inbox. But were they ready for what he had to say? Or more importantly, could he fully embrace the risks of revelation he was about to embark on? Jake Thompson stood confidently at the front of the boardroom, his heart steady as he prepared to unveil not just a proposal, but a testament to his transformation. The air buzzed with a palpable mix of anticipation and skepticism, yet he felt an unwavering resolve coursing through him. It was more than just about education. It was about reclaiming his identity, confronting the taunts of his sister, Emma, and proving to himself that he was worthy of more than the label of just a teacher. He began with a heartfelt narrative of his journey, weaving in personal anecdotes that had fueled his transformation in the past month. Education is not merely a series of numbers and curriculum standards. It's about connecting with the hearts and minds of our students, he articulated firmly. He shared stories of students who had blossomed under his creative engagement, emphasizing how hope, resilience, and empowerment could alter the course of a life. This was not a sales pitch. This was a passionate call to action. As he spoke, he witnessed the board members leaning in, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. For the first time, he could see the walls of indifference crumbling, and with each word, his confidence swelled. On the surface, the boardroom remained a professional sphere, but beneath it, a deeper connection was being forged, a link between passion and purpose, informed by accountability. Points of data surfaced in his presentation, although they felt secondary to the stories that accompanied them. He knew that empirical evidence supported his claims, yet it was the emotional resonance that would anchor his vision. Jake had mastered the balance. Education strategies could thrive on structure, but they needed the soul, the human component, to make a lasting impact. Emma's figure hovered faintly at the back of his mind, but instead of the familiarity of her condescending smirk, Jake embraced her voice as an echo of challenge propelling him forward. "Today, I won't let the specter of just a teacher define me. I'll prove that a teacher can impact lives profoundly," he thought resolutely. The room buzzed with discussion among the board members as they sought clarity and direction. The questions were sharp and insightful, challenging Jake to further contemplate the logistical execution of his initiative. With every inquiry and subsequent response, he found himself diving deeper into the framework he had developed. Jake demonstrated the measurable outcomes they sought, compelling them to envision an adaptable pilot program that would bring change incrementally without overwhelming the existing framework. After what felt like an eternity, the board chair turned to him, a mixture of admiration and contemplation on their face. "Jake, this has been enlightening. We appreciate your passionate approach. We'll give this serious consideration." It wasn't simply a polite dismissal. It was a recognition of the depths he had explored. As he walked out of the boardroom, the weight of expectation had transformed into the thrill of possibility. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment wash over him, a wave of fulfillment that underscored every moment of struggle he had faced in his journey. Perhaps he was no longer the timid boy once mocked by Emma. Instead, he was emerging as a leader who embraced the complexities of not only teaching, but also of personal growth. Jake pulled out his phone, preparing to text Emma with the news of his presentation. The conversation weaved in his mind, a new thread of accountability running between them. "You were right about facing fears," he would say, "and I've risen beyond those shadows." The journey was just beginning, but it was marked by the assurance that he could forge his own path, a vision of education rooted in empathy and authenticity. He now stood not just as Jake the teacher, but Jake the changemaker, poised and ready to redefine what it meant to teach and lead. Jake took a deep breath, stepping into the bright, bustling hallways of his school. His heart raced, but there was no trepidation now, only anticipation. He had achieved recognition from the board, earned respect from colleagues, and discovered a newfound confidence in himself, embracing his identity not as merely a job title but as a mission to enact change for himself and his students. He turned to look back at the boardroom, suddenly realizing this was not the end, but a powerful beginning. The road ahead would challenge him. He knew external opposition awaited, but he also understood that he held the strength to confront any obstacle head-on. He had transformed not just what he did, but who he was, an educator who believed in the profound impact of possibility. With every step, Jake declared his own triumph, a declaration of his presence in the world of education and beyond. The chapter of self-doubt closed as he proudly embraced this new narrative. A recognized force for change, ready to inspire others and prove that one person could indeed make a difference. The moment was now. Jake Thompson was not just a teacher. He was a beacon of transformation, ready to illuminate the paths for others who dared to dream. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. This is the moment for your voice to be heard. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories know how vital it is to support the channel through these actions.